mud slacks on windows, or roll down in Sarah with mud slacks on windows. When the bailiff comes, he'll never find us, 'cause we're all down in Sarah with mud slacks on windows.
The valleys of Lancashire are ringing again to the words of the Bum Bailiff, a protest song dating back to the Industrial Revolution. The man on the left is a bailiff. The man with him is a trainee hoping to learn the tricks of the debt collection trade. But unknown to the bailiff, his colleague is actually a researcher with OpenEye. Tonight, with the help of evidence he collected, OpenEye explores the previously unseen world of the bailiff and asks whether there isn't a better way of collecting debt.
I'll tell you, if I had a gun without any qualms whatsoever, I'd shoot that young fellow.
You know, you're just going to have your tea one day and then somebody comes to your door like this and your world's turned upside down. I think it's awful.
This imposing Victorian building in the centre of Rawtenstall is the headquarters of the largest bailiff company in the northwest. Rossendale certificated bailiffs act on behalf of at least 30 councils in the northwest, from Carlisle to North Wales. And in recent months, business has been booming.
The community charge will be fairer than either the rates or the roof tax. Of course, there are problems in the first year, and we've tried to iron these out.
One of the main problems local councils have faced with the community charge has been collecting it. In the northwest alone, some 1 million people were in arrears at the beginning of the year. Councils have no choice but to take debtors to court.
The council make an application to the magistrates' court. The magistrates' courts then make a liability order. The council then, out of practice, it appears to me, then instruct a firm of bailiffs who just turn up at the debtor's property to seize the goods.
Though many councils still employ their own bailiffs, most have passed on community charge collection to private firms like Rossendale CB. The methods used by the company have attracted criticism from debtors and some lawyers. In an effort to establish how the company operates, OpenEye journalist James Cohen answered an advert in the Burnley Express.
Bailiffs required, of smart appearance with good maths and English. No experience needed as full training will be given. Excellent earning potential.
Using the name James Walker, his application showed he'd been a catering assistant and the manager of a small industrial site in Wigan. 3 weeks later, he was invited to an informal interview. For a company linked to a private investigation agency, it was a rather cursory interview. James was asked whether he was a reporter or a poll tax protester. Soon afterwards, he was out on the road, training with a first call bailiff.
Hi, Jack. Yeah, sorry I'm a bit late.
They spent the day calling on poll tax debtors around Lancashire.
Oh, sorry, buddy. Does John live next door but once?
John is at the end of there, the one what's boarded up.
Okay.
But mine, he's got the double one.
Oh, all right. Right, okay, thanks. Bye.
Were you afraid that he might have set his Doberman on you?
One of the dozens of people our pair called upon was this woman, Anne Harben, a mother of 6, who's struggling to make ends meet because she's not getting adequate maintenance.
Altogether, I get £87 a week, £60 social security, 27 family allowance. You have to go around from supermarket to supermarket and judge which is cheapest. And a lot of the time, you get things that are out of date. The bailiffs came and said I owed, I think it was 60-something. I wasn't here when they came. I was out shopping. And my daughter was here. He just sort of said, if you don't, I want you to sign this, because if you don't, your mother only has 5 days. If you sign it, it gives her 15 days. She'd no idea what what it was she was doing, really. The only thing she thought was, if I don't, then Mum will be in trouble and they could end up taking her away.
In fact, the foreman's 18-year-old daughter had signed was the so-called walking possession agreement, a form which can result in bailiffs taking away goods. It also obliged Anne to pay all Rossendale CB's costs.
When I came back and she told me, well, I blew my stack. I shouted at her. It makes you feel absolutely rotten. They should not have got my daughter to sign. I mean, I was back here at half an hour after they'd left. There must be thousands of people, thousands and thousands, that this sort of thing has happened to.
Fylde Borough Council later said they'd made a mistake and Anne didn't even owe the money after all. Open Eye presented the details of the case to a leading public law barrister, Stephen Sedley QC.
A daughter isn't ordinarily the legal agent of a mother so as to be able to sign away the mother's property. Even leaving aside questions of legality, it seems to me ethically very doubtful whether it's right to get a member of a person's family to assent on their behalf to something as fundamental as taking away that person's household goods.
One of the first things our researcher learned in his new job was that not everyone opens the door to bailiffs. If possible, he was told, it's a good idea to leave the debtor guessing on the doorstep and not make it clear he's a bailiff, a clear breach of most council guidelines.
So you would say the best policy basically is not to tell them that you're from Rossendale CB?
No, not unless they are specifically would. Just tell me you're on behalf of the council. They'll soon know when they get the papers.
But by that time, you're not actually there.
No, that's right. It's psychological.
OK, so who are the occupiers here? Harry?
boss?
That's not back from the council.
Community charge.
Aisle? No, council.
No, you didn't tell them then, did you?
The bailiff's apparent shyness to admit who they really are surfaced recently in Fleetwood. 76-year-old Dorothy Careen suffers from emphysema and is hardly able to walk. She owed Wyre Borough Council £38 in community charge arrears. What she didn't realise was that she was also running the risk of losing her much-loved china cabinet.
There was a knock on the door and I went to the door and I thought they were from the council. He led me to believe they were from the council. I don't think he actually said it, but things that he said made me think he was from the council. So I can't stand. So I stood in the doorway and I said, I'm sorry, I can't stand any longer. You'll just have to come in. So they followed me in and one sat there, one sat there. And I had my trolley with my tea and I said, would you like a cup of tea? One said yes and the other said no. I said, I'm sorry, I've no biscuits. And it's powdered milk. He said, oh, that's all right, but he didn't drink it anyway. So he said, if you sign this form, we can help you. Write away to the office and pay £5 a week. Tell them you'll pay £5 a week and you'll be all right.
In fact, the two men taking tea with Dorothy were from Rossendale CB, the bum bailiffs as she calls them. The form she signed was a walking possession order, impounding her china cabinet.
And then I read the top. And I said, you're the bum bailiffs? No, you are the bum bailiffs. And they never said anything. I said, are you the bum bailiffs? And I can't swear that he said no. What he said was, we're here to help you pay your poll tax. We're just here to help you. That's all we want. We want to help you. And I said, what a sneaky job you've got. If it had been open, and I'd have been asked to sign there, I would have noticed his name, K. Davenport, and bailiff written right behind it. To come in sneaky like that, pretend to be the council, pretend to help me, and they were bailiffs. You know, nobody asks the bailiffs in, do they, for a cup of tea?
Down the coast in Blackpool, another Rossendale CB bailiff also gained access to a home by introducing himself as from the council.
So about 10 o'clock I was sat in here in the living room with the wife and my son, and there was a knock at the door. So I went to the door, answered the door, and there was a fella there, and he said, I'm from the council.
He said, I've come to talk to you about your community charge. So I said, well, what's it about, like? And he said, well, it's about making an offer of payment because you haven't paid it, like. And so I thought, like, he was just, like, coming to have a word with me about it. So it was, like, raining, blowing a gale on the outside, so I said to him, well, come in.
Maureen Foster is a diabetic and a victim of a serious back injury. She'd paid her community charge, but her 20-year-old son David hadn't. She was just preparing to make tea when there was a knock at her door.
I kept him at the door for some time and realised that he wasn't going to go away, so I asked him in. And he still never mentioned bailiff at all. He mentioned Wyre Borough Council. He made the list. He put my Hitachi Teletext television and 3-piece suite and wanted to know if I had a washing machine. He put that down too. All this time I was saying to him, but I can't believe that this is happening. These are my belongings. Well, don't worry about it. It won't come to that. But if you will sign this, this will give your son 14 days in which to get himself sorted out. So I signed, because I was getting quite upset by this time. My husband hadn't arrived home from work. And he left.
Once again, the bailiff had gone away happy. He'd put down Mrs. Foster's belongings against her son's debt, even though she'd paid and he hadn't, and she still hadn't realised he was a bailiff.
I'm not an idiot, and normally I would read a form, but when you're under pressure like that, you don't always sort of do what you normally would do. And he was very, very nice, very polite. I think that actually is a way that they work, really, because he wasn't aggressive at all. He was very nice about it and very helpful towards me. But I mean, I didn't know that I was talking to a bailiff, because he never at any time said that he was.
Blackpool and Wyre councils say bailiffs must identify themselves, and Wyre later wrote to Mrs. Foster apologising for the distress the bailiffs had caused her.
The bailiff's whole purpose in coming is to gain access to the property, and the likelihood, I would have thought, is that any description he uses of himself will be the one he thinks best calculated to get him in.
Tell me, if you were a borough treasurer and you found that a firm of bailiffs that you were employing was going around saying that they were from the council, what would your reaction be?
I hope I would stop them. But the problem that the borough treasurer might very well have is that he has massive amounts of unpaid poll tax to cope with.
In Lancaster, the City Council investigated an allegation that Rossendale CB harassed a woman who was on the point of paying. She owed £450.61. She had 400 in notes and counted out the rest in coins from her children's holiday fund. She'd been expecting the bailiffs all day, but they still hadn't arrived by 10 at night.
At 10 o'clock, the band come on the door. I went to the window because I was on my own with children in bed. I asked for proof of who they were. They just flicked this card up at the window, which I couldn't properly see because it was pitch black. So I told them to wait on the doorstep while I got the police. That's when they started shouting, if we have to wait for the police, we'll charge you £25 more for waiting. The police arrived within minutes. I opened the door. I asked the officers if they were for real, and they said yes. I then handed them the money, but I told them there was £50 and 61 pence in 5p pieces, 20p pieces and tens, and I said that it was all there, and that they could not come at this time at night, it was illegal. They told me it was a load of crap. They could come whenever. He eventually did count it, but he said depending how long it took him to count this silver out, he would charge me another £25. The manner, their attitude, everything was all wrong. They just, we want your money and we can push past you, empty your house whether you like it or not.
Lancaster City Council has told Rossendale CB to apologise for the bailiff's behaviour to the woman at 10 o'clock at night. When collecting rent, bailiffs can only call between dawn and dusk, but with the community charge, the law is unclear.
What's needed, if we're going to have a system of distress for unpaid poll tax, is a clear set of rules which both the bailiff and the citizen and the local authority can understand and apply so that everybody knows what can and can't be done.
Some bailiffs argue that they too would like to know what they can do when faced with resistance from people who have no intention of paying up. The Marsh estate in Lancaster is, in the parlance of the bailiff, bandit country. The political controversy surrounding the poll tax means some can't pay, others won't pay.
Was it with the Rosendale or something they were coming from? Anyway, they sent a letter here. I've taken a notice of it.
Did he say where he's from when he called it?
No, he had on the thing, Rosendale, you know. I presumed he was from there.
What have you done with it?
Eh? Well, what do you think? It's on the tip now, isn't it? It's gone.
Other people on the estate have formed bailiff patrols and gather outside houses which they think the bailiffs are about to visit.
The bailiffs don't like crowds. They're kind of, you know, crowd shy. You know, and the minute they see a crowd and they know that they're going to get, you know, a hard time, they back off.
Well, wherever they go, we chase them.
You follow the van?
Yeah, we follow vans.
How do you know that you're following the right van?
Well, Susan, she has some addresses. Well, the numbers of the cars. That's Susan, so that's what we do.
This is one of the vans used by Rossendale CB. In the event of household goods having to be seized, they're carried away and stored in warehouses prior to being auctioned. On the day Open Eye followed it, the two bailiffs travelled from Rossendale to Stretford, where they met up with another pair of bailiffs for breakfast in a cafe. They discussed, among other things, how they managed to earn between £500 and £600 a week. The cost of the bailiff van appearing at a debtor's door is £68, whether or not the debtor is in. Sometimes such costs more than double the size of the original debt. Though seizing goods does occur, the threat of removal appears to be the bailiff's most potent weapon. Removing goods occurs in only about 5% of cases, but the costs to the debtor remain the same. Back in East Lancashire, our researcher and his trainer were executing a small but controversial measure, the so-called constructive levy. Here, finding no one at home, the bailiff posts a form which effectively impounds all the goods in the house. The debtor may still have them in the house, but it is the bailiff who legally possesses them, and the debtor mustn't do anything with them.
What was that, a constructive levy then?
A constructive levy is the sort of farce that only a lawyer could invent. Taking away goods means taking away goods. Constructively taking away goods, that is not taking them away, but having everybody behave as if they had been taken away, is a legal fiction of a high order. And to expect ordinary people, who by definition are probably down on their luck and may have quite limited education, to understand such a process is really the sort of thing that only a lawyer could even entertain.
At the end of James's first week with the bailiffs, he was called into Rossendale CB's headquarters for a regular briefing session. Here he met some bailiffs who were also concerned about their work.
The first week I ever do on my own for Lancaster, I always taking it down there, I'm sure. And it was like, no, £380 or £400, I went to this house, this old fellow let me in. All he had was a bed, like a camp bed. He had one wooden seat and a little card table, and that's all he had. And he had 2 club feet. He'd never been out of that flat for 3 years. And he had £380 to pay. And it just sort of stuck in my mind that somewhere the social services are letting the people out there down badly. Well, there's millions out there that are living in comparative squalor. Yet they don't bother, do they? You don't have a live aid person.
Rossendale CB declined to be interviewed on camera, but did agree to provide us with written answers. Anne Harben's daughter Nikki signed a walking possession agreement, even though she wasn't the named debtor, nor did she own the impounded goods. The company wouldn't comment on individual cases because of confidentiality, but on this general issue they said,
"The law provides that a walking possession order may be made by any responsible person. You should realise that if a walking possession agreement is not entered into, the bailiff should be making arrangements there and then for the goods to be removed and sold, and should not be allowing any period of grace or time to pay.
They would have had to forcibly make me sign it, wouldn't they?
Dorothy Corrine, Maureen Foster and Joseph Hume all thought Rossendale CB bailiffs had misled them by suggesting they were from the council. The company gave us their policy.
All bailiffs employed by this company are instructed to inform the debtor that they work for Rossendale CB Limited, who act as agents for the local authority. I can, however, accept that on occasions, particularly when the bailiff may be under stress, that he may say he was attending on behalf of the local authority, without making it clear that he was from Rossendale CB.
In Lancaster, bailiffs called on a debtor at 10 at night. The company responded,
We endeavour to make contact with debtors during normal working hours, namely 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. In circumstances where contact cannot be made during those hours, we attend at other hours, and we would certainly not criticise a bailiff for making a call at 10 p.m. The bailiff is not making a social call, and though he's instructed to be polite and pleasant, he is there to remove goods.
The company also said it had a code of conduct for its bailiffs, but this document was confidential. In the absence of this, lawyers from Lancashire Law Centre and other parts of the country are drawing up their own code of conduct based on the cases shown in this programme. This new code of conduct has already gained national backing.
The law's a mess. It's anachronistic, antiquated in parts. There are great gaps in it in other parts, so that nobody knows what bailiffs can and can't do. I'd support the introduction of a code, not because it's a substitute for clear legislation which lays down in an Act of Parliament what bailiffs can and can't do, but because it's a starting point. Local authorities can incorporate it into existing and future contracts with their bailiffs and can take steps to discontinue the services of the bailiffs if the code is breached.
The Code of Conduct, which will also cover collection of the new council tax, covers three main issues. That all bailiffs carry and use ID cards at all times. That the constructive levy is abandoned. That councils, before using bailiffs, should offer to recover debt by attachment of earnings orders and direct benefit deductions.
Even a person who has deliberately transgressed the law is entitled in a civilised society to be dealt with in a civilised fashion, and if they have to be punished or be penalised by enforced payment, to have that done in an orderly and civilised fashion. But many people who are in debt for poll tax have not deliberately transgressed the law in the sense that they could pay but won't pay. They're people who can't pay, and such people are particularly entitled to consideration when the enforcement of their debt becomes an issue.
I actually felt like ending it all. Like, well, as I said at the time, I felt like cutting my throat and just getting away from it all.
I didn't sleep for at least a week, and I felt as though I was in shock, because we've paid our bills all our life. We've struggled when we were a lot younger, but we've always managed to pay. We both paid our poll tax on bankers' orders, and it's a dreadful shock when something like this happens.
Feels dirty, doesn't it, to have bailiffs come in? All these people around here saying she's had the bailiffs. It's a stigma, isn't it?
If there was a change in the law, what would you like to see happen?
The bailiffs say, I am the bum bailiff.
Oh, we're all down in Soho with mud slacks on windows. Oh, we're all down in Soho with mud slacks on windows. When the bum bailiff comes, he'll never find us. 'Cause we're all down in Soho with mud slacks on windows.